Andrew here. Welcome to today's video where I thought it would be fun to have a look at my boxed NES game collection. Over 300 games all in their original packaging with manuals. And of course, as it's one of my all-time favorite consoles, it's definitely one of the ones that I have focused more on trying to get games that are complete. Not that it's something I really worry about too much. I have always been more of a cart collector. Just having the game is what matters most to me, because when I was a kid, that's how it was. You didn't have all your games in boxes in mint condition and such. You just had all the cartridges maybe in some kind of carrying case or just laying about. So that's definitely kind of what I connect with when I think about video games. But I definitely do think that, especially for games that I particularly like, or just if any time I come across a game I'm able to pick it up, I do. It is fun to have them in the box as well. So I thought I'd just kind of do a casual introduction to my collection here. Something I think I did a few years ago, but it was a little bit different at that time. Because back then, all my games would have been standing up vertically rather than on their ends like they are now, where you can actually see the tops of the box rather than their sides. But thankfully, NES boxes look nice pretty much no matter where you look at them from. The front, the top, the sides. Just don't look at them from the bottom. There's nothing down there to have a look at. But otherwise, it is pretty nice being able to display them like this with their top ends showing. It really saves space compared to when I had them flip the other way. So yeah, this is just going to be a quick introduction of some maybe more of the notable games in my NES boxed collection here. We'll be skipping over some of the more common ones, but I hope that you enjoy this. Again, it's going to be very casual. I guess I'm not the most professional YouTuber all the time. No, I should try to be more professional with more editing and stuff. But I just have a passion for obviously collecting, playing, and talking about video games as well. And I find that then if I go and spend like 30 hours editing this massive, documentary, it's beautiful, it could be put in the Smithsonian or something like that, it takes away from the, kind of realness of it. And what's the realness? Authenticity. It becomes more of like a Hollywood production, rather than just a guy who enjoys video games and sharing them with everyone. So I hope that you can enjoy, this, despite the fact that there's probably a million other people out there who are like, I know how to use Microsoft Word, and I mean, not sure how that would help you with this video. I guess you could type the script out. I don't do scripts. Everything I do is just offhand, which is why I'm bound to make like a billion mistakes, but you're not here to listen to me talk about that. The first thing I want to show is the way this works. Again, just proving how unprofessional I am. It starts from the top and goes down to the bottom down here, which hopefully is on camera and everyone can see. Yes, it is. And it goes from left to right. So it starts from here to the right. Then it comes from here to the right. And it does the same until you get down to this row, and then goes left to right and left to right. And it's all in alphabetical order because I would not have it any other way in my collection, depending on the console. Sometimes I don't keep them in alphabetical order, but for the NES I do. But we're going to start with this kind of little strange area in the top left here, where we have a game that's just in the box that's way too big to kind of fit in with the rest of them, and that is Maxi 15, a kind of combination of 15 of those weird American Video Entertainment unofficial NES games, and it's a lot more common to see it just in this kind of plastic case, which we'll open up in a second and I'll show you what's in there. But it actually came in a box that looked like this, and this, the case was inside. Unfortunately, the top has kind of been cut off. It's not in the best shape, but it is definitely not common to actually see the box for Max 15. It's not a common game to come across at all, but especially having the box, is not something you see too often. But then here's the case, again, kind of the sticker of showing what games are included on the cart on the back. And inside this case you kind of get the manual, nothing holding it in place nicely or anything like that, so you gotta be very careful here. And then in kind of like a nice foam encasing, you get the shiny cartridge going on. So yeah, that's just something that, it starts with M, but just not at all fits in with the rest of the games. So I kind of keep it up in the top left there. We're gonna put that back nice and carefully. There we go. One last thing we want to do is destroy anything that we talk about today. A couple other things that I have hiding up here. This is something that always hurts when you see it, but back in the day, nobody thought about taking care of their NES boxes or anything like that. This is a copy of, I almost said a copycat, no, a copy of Cowboy Kid. And it is inside of a plastic case, which it seems normal enough, until you realize that this case was made by cutting up the box and taking the front of the box, inserting it into the front of this case, and then taking the the side and back of the box and making the rest of the plastic case with it. So it's like, no, somebody destroyed the original box to make this. It's not just like they printed it off of the internet back before they're like there was no easily accessible internet or anything like that. It's not uncommon to come across games like that. That would probably have been done if a store was renting it out. They would just make a plastic case like this, and unfortunately you know, it's not hard to come across other games that are like that as well. And they don't really fit in like that. Like, I don't have like a specific section that I keep games like that, so they just kind of end up stuck in the top, which is kind of how it has to be. Otherwise, up here we have the Aladdin Deck Enhancer. It's been very popular on the internet as of late. Lots of people making videos about that. I also showed, I picked up the second one. I actually have another one still sealed inside my World of Nintendo cabinet. But that one is open, although all of these games, I actually have all 6 games, still sealed, never open in their original box. This used to be a really rare thing. The Aladdin Deck Enhancer was not easy to come by at all, until I guess someone, you know, one day, just as that happens, found a warehouse full of them or something like that. And then you could easily pick up the Aladdin Deck Enhancer sealed, with all the games sealed, for like under $100 on eBay for a time. So it was very simple to get your hands on, and that was when I grabbed mine. But enough about the kind of weird section going on in the top left there. Let us begin with the actual officially licensed NES games. I already showed like 1943 is a fantastic one. Here we have Asterisks. Actually, not a North American released game. This is a PAL only release. But as you can see, the box still looks exactly as our North American boxes did. It's just cool to have that one complete in the box. What other notables do we have going on here? Things like Batman. Of course, there's a lot of the black box games hidden throughout my boxed NES collection. I have about half of them. I think it would be really cool to own a complete set of the black box games. These are, of course, you know, the original releases on the Nintendo Entertainment System, including a lot of, you know, the simpler sports games like baseball, 10-yard fight, volleyball, soccer, and such. But also, of course, you know, like Mario, Super Mario Brothers being a very prominent one. Here is Battle Kid 2. Mountain of Torment. Of course, a homebrew game, an absolutely fantastic homebrew game, but also it has, you can buy it with a box and manual sealed and all that. This is actually an unopened copy. It's just such a fantastic game that I felt it was worthy to have, you know, a copy of that in my collection. And I'm not too much of a NES homebrew person. Like, I'm not going to buy, you know, like Simon Says or something like that, complete in box for the NES, but Battle Kid 2 and Battle Kid 1 are absolutely fantastic games. Unfortunately, I know the creators, I think Sivek, he's very busy these days. He has a whole bunch of other stuff going on, but you know, number 2 ends on a cliffhanger, and yet another 2 that, you know, is now probably going to go out on without having a third one, which is very unfortunate. But that's the way it is. I definitely recommend playing the first 2 though, regardless of if there's a third one, because they're still such fun games. Battle of Olympus is a very fun game if you like the Legend of Zelda 2, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and you know, you're craving more of a similar styled game. Battle of Olympus is definitely for you. Bible Adventures, of course, made very famous by the angry video game nerd, but it's probably not too often that you see a copy of it complete in the box. So that is pretty cool. I like having the unofficial games in the box because, I mean, yeah, you see a lot of the official NES ones, but there's just something about having a game that, you know, wasn't licensed by Nintendo and seeing the little differences that they did when packaging it. Like the sleeve is unofficial, and, you know, this is kind of the other things that you get inside there. It's fun having an unofficial game in the box, I think. Other people are like, why? I think absolutely 0 sense, Andrew. You're just crazy. Here is Bubble Bobble Part 2, complete in the box. Unfortunately, not too minty. The top has a little bit of damage. The front's probably a little bit faded. However, Bubble Bobble 2 is a quite rare game, and because it was in the box, the cartridge is actually in pretty much mint shape, but the outside, a little bit of damage. The manual and stuff is all in there. And again, definitely not a very common game to come across. It's definitely, you know, up there with a lot of the other 2s, like Rescue Rangers 2, Power Blade 2, Bubble Bobble 2, somewhere in the middle between those 2. I think Power Blade 2 is probably more rare than Bubble Bobble Part 2. I haven't actually looked up the price lately because I've had it for so long. It was something I got kind of part as a big bundle, and I definitely got lucky with that one back in the day. Another 2, which is not the most common, is Casino Kid 2. And it's funny, if you look at the back of the box, you can see, I guess at some point, Blockbuster Video, you know, selling off their old games to make way for new ones. $12.99 you could have bought Casino Kid 2 complete in the box. I think it's so funny because sometimes you see price stickers on older games and it's like the new price. So it's like, you know, $7.99, or not $7.99, like $79.99 for, like, you know, bases loaded or something like that. And it's like, what? That's crazy. And then other times you'll see, you know, like, again, like $13 for Casino Kid 2, and you're like, that! I wish I could have paid that back then. So I always think it's cool having price stickers on older games, and as long as it's not like blocking the label or in a spot that it really causes an issue, I'll usually leave older price stickers like that on. But that's just part of the history, and I mean, I love this. This is all about, you know, me collecting the history, you know, getting in touch with those games and experiences that I had in the past. It's definitely, you know, it's not like some people, I guess, you know, like anything like that must go. I think that it's all, you know, it's part of the cool experience. We got Castlevania 3, Dracula's Curse, Castlevania 2, no Castlevania 1 in the box though, unfortunately, but hopefully someday. Chrysalis, an awesome, awesome, awesome NES game, which I actually only beat back in 2017, and the reason for that is because many years before that, I had attempted to play it, I got super far, and then I had an experience which many people have probably had at some point with retro games. I put it in to go continue, all my data was deleted, and then that just hurts. It's just like, oh. And of course at the time that happens, you're going to be like, well, I don't really feel like replaying everything that I just did. So I put it off for a few years, or maybe, you know, even more than a few years, probably almost like a decade. Then finally went back to it, and it's a really cool game, so it's really neat to have that complete in the box, because it comes with like a, you know, an extra big manual with all sorts of tips and tricks in it, which is pretty cool. A couple more black box games. Here we have Donkey Kong and Donkey Kong Jr. Here we have, you know, kind of damage on the front, but that's nothing compared to what you get on the back here, where it's just kind of completely ripped. And unfortunately, with earlier releases of NES games, there was kind of, does this one have it? Yes, it does. So this one you can see where, thankfully, things are still in good shape. There was kind of a tab on the back that could have been used to hang it up on like a hook or something, I guess, when it was on display on the shelf. It definitely doesn't seem like a very practical thing. And you can see that for the games where that flap was used, they usually got ripped off, and it just destroys the box, which is very unfortunate. So displaying this one from the top is unfortunately not the prettiest thing, because I mean there's essentially no top left. that's kind of what I'm getting at here. Also, this is a good time to point out another thing that's going on. Let me get this back here though, nicely. No need to rush. Hopefully this video doesn't end up being too long, but every time I say that, they do end up being like super long. On the tops here, you can tell if it's the Canadian release or not because it says Mattel, where the American ones will not say that. And I mean, I'm comparing two different games here, but just imagine that, you know, there is also a Donkey Kong out there that doesn't say Mattel, so that would be the American version, where the one that says Mattel is the Canadian version. As you can tell, because there's a French and stuff on the back, where baseball, not Mattel, all English. And you don't hear people talk too much about, like, you know, I only collect the American ones, or I only collect the Canadian ones, or, like, people don't usually distinguish too much between them. Like, I bet there's people out there who would have, like, a complete NES box set, but they probably have some Canadian ones mixed in. I don't know. You don't see people distinguishing that kind of thing too much. Just like you don't see people distinguishing, like, you know, a Japanese copy of the game speedrun versus an American copy. Like, everybody will speedrun the Japanese one because, you know, there's less characters per sentence, so I guess the theory is that you can get through text boxes faster and such. But I don't think that in the speedrunning community, they separate those. So no one says, like, you know, the fastest Paper Mario Japanese version speedrun is this, and the fastest American speedrun is this. It's like everyone just assumes, you know, considers it one game, but everyone plays the Japanese version because it's faster. So I guess, you know, collecting is kind of the same. Does that make any sense? I don't know. That's something that's been on my mind for a while. It's like, I think that speedrunning is weird in that regard. You think they would separate it, but then that would just cause, you know, an even more mixed bag of stuff going on there. So back to NES games and not about speedrunning. What should we look at next? How about we look at Final Fantasy, another very cool NES game in the box, and this one definitely has some weight to it, and it makes sense why. As we read the front, it says it includes an 84-page explorer's handbook along with maps and all sorts of other things. This is what gaming was back in the day. Like, when you bought this and you opened it up and you saw that massive book, these maps, you knew that you were in for an epic, an epic experience. But nowadays, it's like you open it up, it's like nothing in there. It's just people. If you did not grow up in the time when manuals and maps and guides and such were a thing, like it's just so cool to be able to open up a box and, you know, have that experience that isn't just taking a game out and popping it in the console, but being able to see this art and such. And of course, especially it was important back in like the NES days where you're just seeing these 8-bit sprites and stuff on the screen, but being able to look through the book and like, okay, well that's what, you know, I'm supposed to be seeing from that. It was a very big part of gaming that I definitely miss. And I mean, I know I'm definitely not alone in that regard. And while being able to look through the manual and see those kind of, you know, more detailed interpretations of the sprites is no longer really a necessary thing, it is just still so much fun, I think, to, you know, have something to look through, even when you're not playing the game. What else we got here? We got another one of those 2s that is kind of rare, and you have to, you know, carefully figure out how to remove things here. This is actually not what I want to look at. We'll be looking at that in a second, though. Hopefully this video is going well. Godzilla 2, another pretty rare one. This one, $199.99. So I mean, that's pretty much what you can expect. That's pretty much what it's worth, complete and such. That one was not a deal in the slightest. If only it was $19.99, that would be pretty cool. But sometimes, unfortunately, I think I traded for that one. That was why that one was so expensive. But unfortunately, sometimes these days, you know, you're not just going to come across everything at a thrift store anymore. But speaking of things that I found at a thrift store, Home Alone 2 in the NES, or rather, complete in box, fits that very well. And it's funny because I actually found this mixed in with the videotapes. I mean, somebody, I guess, at the thrift store probably said Home Alone 2. This is obviously, you know, it's shaped like a VHS, put it with the videos. So I was looking for them, I was like, hey, wait a second, that's not a video. And yeah, Home Alone 2 complete in the box, mixed in with the VHSs at the thrift store. I thought that was pretty funny. So I mean, I have definitely had my fair share of, you know, thrift store scores over the years, even if it's not a game based on a movie. Like I found Conker's Bad Fur Day complete in the box for Nintendo 64 mixed in with VHSs for $5. Like, thrift stores used to be, you know, like the golden land of finding old video game stuff, but they've all caught on now, and it's like, hey, that's a video game. The first thing they do is run to eBay. And it's not even like they look up what it goes for. They like look up what the most expensive one is listed for, and it's like, oh yeah, Mario Duck Hunt, $25. Unfortunately, the golden days of thrifting are definitely behind us. Let me make sure we are moving on correctly here. Another fairly rare game is Jetsons, Cogswell's Caper, complete in the box. If only it was the other Hanna-Barbera game complete in the box. Flintstones Surprise at Dinosaur Peak. This is another one where you can tell it came from Blockbuster for only $7.99 back in the day. Like, that's just awesome. If only people knew what some of these games would be worth someday. Here we have Kickmaster, another fairly rare game in the box, and it's funny because way back when I got this complete in the box, we're talking like, you know, over a decade ago, it was nowhere near the rare and expensive game that it is today. It was pretty much, you know, not that much more, you know, expensive than other NES games at the time, but now it's like shot way up there, and it's like, oh, okay, well, it's cool that I had it in the box. You know, I never really intended it for the one of the, you know, the top items in my NES collection, but it's just kind of how it became. And it's funny when games do that without you really realizing. I guess another one I kind of forgot to mention would be Dragon Fighter. Did the same thing. Pretty expensive NES game these days. And it's like, yeah, I just had it complete in the box. It's like, oh, the price for that one's going up. That's kind of cool. So, I mean, I don't collect for like the intention of it being an investment or anything like that. I understand that just like the stock market, it's very easy that, you know, any of these games would like crash at any moment. And aside from like the top ticket NES items like stadium events, Little Samson, it has been apparent that, you know, some of the more common stuff is not holding the value that it once did. And for me personally, someone who didn't collect with like, you know, the intention of this being like my retirement or something like that, it's not too much of an issue, but it's just interesting to kind of see, you know, that roller coaster of things going on. And people have compared it to like Atari 2600 games, where people don't really want them anymore, but in the past there actually was kind of a desire for them. So will NES games be the same? Well, all these games, even the ones now like Dragon Fighter, Kickmaster, you know, a few $100 complete in box, will they drop to like, you know, 50 someday? It'll be interesting to see. I think that people have a little bit more connection with Nintendo, considering that they're still going, unlike Atari, who's kind of faded into obscurity. But I think that will keep the interest in the NES a little higher compared to things that came before it, like in television and such. But we'll see. Again, not something I'm particularly worried about because I don't have any intention of selling my collection. But again, I think it's just fun to keep an eye on those kind of things. Here's another one, Kirby's Adventure. Definitely a very classic NES game. Very nice looking box, I believe. And here's another case of an unfortunate disaster regarding that tab on the back. Yeah, it really wrecks it when you're displaying your games on the side. because this not having that top art really causes trouble. Here's another kind of disaster, but this one was man-made rather than, I mean, I guess the other one's kind of man-made too, but it's more accidental, I would think, than this, where, you know, it looks like a completely ordinary copy of Legendary Wings until you turn it around to the back and see that somebody cut out the barcode here, probably for warranty reasons, and mailed it into Capcom, and now you're left with a massive hole in the back of your box. So make sure if you ever buy a boxed video game, you're not just like, oh man, the cover art, it's like, you know, it's so minty, but then you accidentally miss the fact that the, you know, the UPC code is missing or whatever on the back there. Definitely an unfortunate tragedy, but it happens sometimes. People wanted that warranty where unless you're like literally using your NES game as a frisbee, it shouldn't break, but I mean, knowing kids, I'm sure that a few NES games probably were used as a frisbee at some point. Mid-kids, not the most exciting game to have on the shelf. The logo is so small, not sure why they thought that one was a good idea, but something much more exciting than that would be my NES Mega Man collection. Unfortunately, I'm only halfway there with Mega Man 2. The classic where, you know, he's holding the gun, it's like, what's up with that? I'd love to have the first one, but unfortunately I don't. Mega Man 3, where the art starts getting a little bit better. And, of course, Mega Man 4. Fantastic game. I would love to get more NES Mega Man games in the box. I actually have Mega Man 6 with the manual, so all I need is like the empty box to complete that, but as you can imagine, just finding an empty box is not an easy thing. Usually if someone else found the empty box, they would just hang on to it until they got the carton manual themselves and complete it. So you don't really find like just the box for sale. Unless you go on eBay and it's like, hey, a reproduction box someone printed for like $10. It's like, I'm not gonna pay for a reproduction. That would be just silly. Metal Gear, Metroid, cool games, not particularly worth pulling out though. But here is everyone's favorite NES game, Mighty No. 9. Now this is, I kind of included on the shelf this is just to see if anyone notices. This is the Kickstarter reward NES-styled Mighty No. 9 box. I actually also have the Famicom Japanese version, thanks to Teal Game Master, who sent me his. That was absolutely really cool. I love having both of them because I actually am one of the few people who like Mighty No. 9. And that's why I do not actually see it as a problem, you know, having it with my NES games here, because I liked it. I thought it was a fun game, I had fun with it. I might even like it a little bit more than Mega Man 11. That's probably going to get me like a million dislikes. But please do not. Please like the video. Please like and subscrizzle, and you know, donate $1 billion to my Patreon account, which does not actually exist. See, that's how you be a professional. You know, I gotta list all those things off at the beginning, end, and 5 times during the middle of the video, and everyone will respect me. Moving on. Well, as you can tell, I have opinions on the state of YouTube as it is, and they are not always the most amazing. Regardless though. Next up though is the NES Cleaning Kit. And I like this because there are actually 2 different copies of this, and the same applies to the Super Nintendo Cleaning Kit as well. There was a very boring version that looked like this, and then they later on released a more updated version where it actually has Mario kind of wiping away all of the glitching from the screen, which I really like. And I mean, otherwise there's actually like no difference between them, but it is just cool having both of those different versions, I think. It's neat that they, you know, they redesigned it. They're like, it's not selling. Maybe we should actually depict what it does on the front of the box, and that will help. Next up, we have Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 complete in the box. Unfortunately, it's another one of those cases where I own 2 out of 3 of the complete set. Just like Castlevania, I own 2 and 3, but not the first one. In this case, I own 1 and 2, but not the third one. One kind of cool thing to note about earlier Tecmo games is that if you look at the top, they all included a unique kind of symbol depending on which game it was. Like there's a whole bunch of Tecmo games that actually start with the word Tecmo. So like Tecmo Bowl, for example, has like a football symbol. And what happened is inside the box there is actually a flyer that says, I think if you collect 2 or 3 of them, cut them out and then mail them in to Tecmo, you would be sent a free Tecmo watch, like a wristwatch, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of a quick way that if you're looking through a box of box NES games, you can tell that that is a Tecmo game. There were other companies too that kind of had standardized boxes which you could use to figure out, you know, just who it was that made them. Like Konami, of course, all had kind of the silver-ish boxes, like Bobby Billy there, Castlevania had it, and then you have SNK, where their boxes are actually fairly similar to Konami's, except it's silver with these red and blue lines down the side. Like here's another one here, like Iron Tank and Ikari Warriors. All kind of share that design, but of course it's not always true. Like here you have Golgo 13, not related to either of those two, but it also has a silver box. But it's just kind of neat seeing those similar boxes, you know, from the same company together. And if I didn't organize them by alphabetical order, I'd probably organize them by company, and it would look really nice having all those similar boxes side by side. Moving on though, what else should we talk about? Paperboy 2, kind of a rare game, not too rare though, but it's definitely not up there with the other 2s, like, you know, Power Blade 2 and all that. Punch Out, Prince of Persia. You of course now get like this, Quattro Adventure, one of those Codemaster Aladdin games, but in this case, here's Quattro Adventure for the Aladdin Deck Enhancer, and here it is, just in its normal NES out-of-the-box compatible box. And it's like, ugh. The Deck Enhancer is just so silly. And it was basically just a money-saving scheme where they figured we can sell this one kind of deck enhancer thing and sell smaller cartridges which cost less to make, and then, you know, save money all around that way. But then they ended up releasing them in bigger cartridges anyway, and they're essentially the same game. So just silly all around that that's even a thing that happened. What else should we point out here? I know, again, as I mentioned, this video is going a little bit long. Here's a complete series on the NES that I actually do have. Romancing of, or not Romancing, not Romancing Saga, but Romance of the Three Kingdoms 1 and 2. They're not my favorite games. I've never been a fan of kind of these strategy type games. I've never been very good at them. And I don't know, they're just something I've never had the biggest desire to get into, but those aren't the, you know, the most common NES games. So it's cool to have the 2 of those complete in the box. What else do we have going on here? We have Shockwave, an unlicensed NES game. Again, I always like having those in the box. We have 2 copies of Startropics here. Which is actually just, you know, people will know I love to keep like a bajillion copies of Startropics. I'll let you see if you can figure out the difference. Hopefully they're on camera properly. This one is actually the Canadian one. You can see that at some point at Microplay, it was $75, which is pretty amazing. Again, yeah, because it says Mattel on the top, you can tell it's Canadian. Has French and English on the back. I do have an American copy somewhere as well. But this one is actually the German version, which is pretty cool. So the PAL German version. Get all that German on the front and back again. I think the game is still in English, so I mean, it's kind of silly, but yeah, it's all in there. Nice and heavy because I think the instruction manual has to be in like 17 different languages. So that's pretty neat. And of course, right beside that, Startropics 2, Zoda's Revenge. And that takes us down to our final little section down here. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Again, as I said, it has been going on a little bit long, but I could just talk all day about NES games. Again, talking about companies that have similar styled boxes, Capcom actually had 2 different kind of sets, where their later games were in these purple boxes, where the top is purple, and they have kind of a purple frame around them. But then their earlier games, like Ghosts and Goblins or Gunsmoke, were actually in these blue boxes, so these kind of navy blue boxes with kind of a grid, a wireframe grid thing in the background. And those are earlier Capcom releases. And again, like Ghosts and Goblins right here. Just another one. So that's what the earlier Capcom games looked like. Meanwhile, the later ones all had that more purple border style kind of thing. So that's cool. I definitely like seeing that, you know, they changed things as they went on. Definitely reminiscent of maybe the Sega Genesis, where the cases all started out kind of like black with that grid before moving on to more of a kind of red design. I'm not sure why they decided to, you know, change things mid-console like that. This kind of thing, you know, make things a little bit confusing. But if that's just the way it goes. Here we have Sunday Fun Day with the subtitle that I don't think many people actually know exists, The Ride. Like, it's just weird. Of course, this being, you know, the more Christian-friendly version of Menace Beach. A very silly NES game, as I'm sure Teal Game Master can tell you after I made him play at that time. We have the complete set of Mario Brothers 1, 2, and 3. What else do we have that's noteworthy down here? As we get down into the lower letters, I own less that's like significantly noteworthy. The Three Stooges, Tiles of Fate, Top Gun. I'm sure I'm probably forgetting something. Again, with the no script thing going on, there's probably something I'm gonna forget to mention and be like, oh wait. Here's something we can talk about, like Uncharted Waters. There were a lot of those kind of, you know, more they're not strategy RPGs, are they? Is that what they're called? I'm getting my genres all mixed up now. But like where, you know, you command forces around and move things about. I have a few games like this, like Uncharted Waters, Gemfire. Definitely not the rarest NES games ever, but still ones that aren't, you know, quite plentiful. Not many people rushed out and bought Uncharted Waters on the day it was released, if you can believe that. So that's a cool game to have complete in box. Wario's Woods complete in the box is pretty neat. And of course both the Ninja, well not both the Ninja Turtle games, there's 4 Ninja Turtle games on the NES. And the first 2 are definitely the 2 I played the most, so I definitely like having those 2 in the box. Despite the fact that, I mean, the Angry Video Game Nerd is of course, no, it's a joke show. You know, he amps up the hilarity and exaggerates things for the point of comedy. Ninja Turtles 1, a lot of problems, pretty unfair at times, but definitely I think one of my all-time favorite NES games. Because I mean, what NES game wasn't unfair at times? So it's just kind of par for the course, and it's a game I'm definitely happy to have complete in the box. And down here we actually have a couple of copies of the original Legend of Zelda. One being the Canadian copy, and one being the American copy, and there's actually quite a big difference between the boxes. As you will see, the American copy, this one right here, had that kind of window where you could see the gold-colored cartridge through it, while this one is actually just a solid box with no window at all, despite the fact that the cartridge in there is gold. So I guess this is a case where, you know, if you care about variants and not just the kind of metal at the top, it is neat to actually own both of those. And last but not least, of course, the Legend of Zelda 2. I really like the Legend of Zelda 2. I think I read recently that it's like the Zelda game Miyamoto regrets making, which is rather interesting. There's reasons for that, not just like because it's different, but because there was things that they wanted to do with it that they weren't able to do with it and such. But I'm happy that Zelda 2 exists because I think it's a pretty cool game. And one more, actually there's something else we're going to talk about a little bit about after this as well. This does not fit nicely in with the rest of the games, despite the fact it does say what it is on top. This is Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. It's actually an NES game, but it has a massive box, and the reason for that is because there is actually an encyclopedia inside here that you are supposed to use to help solve puzzles that you encounter in the game. I guess, you know, you're supposed to, in the game, it will mention a certain time period or a certain location or a certain person of history, and it's like, oh, okay, well I have to look that up inside my encyclopedia so I can figure out then, I guess it's the time or the place where I should then go to investigate that person. So that's kind of cool. I don't think there's probably many people who own the encyclopedia. It's definitely something that goes missing easily. Mine actually did not originally include the encyclopedia. I found it at a thrift store back when I used to go to them all the time. I had the box, I had the game, but the encyclopedia was missing. So I finally came across it and I was able to make that complete. I'm 99% sure that the one in there is the correct one. And yeah, there's probably not too many people out there who have the complete in-box copy of Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. So, with all of that said, that's my boxed NES games on the shelf collection. There are a few games I own that are not here. Like, I do not own, have a copy of Gyromite in the box on the shelf. We'll actually talk a little bit more about Gyromite in the near future should all things go well on my channel, but the Gyromite that is this size of in the box is actually inside with my deluxe set, deluxe NES bundle, which came with Rob, Duck Hunt, and Gyromite. They actually came in their original boxes inside that bigger console box. So while I have an extra copy of Duck Hunt here, I only have a smaller box copy of Gyromite inside of that bigger box. Also, I have a couple more things I would like to show you here, and these are 8 sealed, brand new, never opened NES games that I own. And I normally keep these inside my World of Nintendo cabinet nice and safe, and don't include them with the rest of my NES games here. And those are Rampart, which if we look, there's a sticker, brand new back in the day, would have been $54.99. So you can be the judge of whether you think that would have been worth it or not. We have Athletic World, and of course, brand new in the box on the NES means that it has this kind of plastic connecting line on the back. I don't know if it's showing up on my camera, but I think that pretty much every officially sealed NES game should have that line on the back. Dragon Warrior. A very cool game to have, you know, brand new because of all the, you know, the different books and such that it included. NES Open Golf. And the last 4 are Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom, the non-Tengen version. 720. Win, lose, or draw. And Crystal Mines, an unofficial NES game. So this one actually does not have that line on the back, I'm guessing because their sealing procedure was likely different. But yeah, it's cool to have an unlicensed NES game in the box as well. So nothing like super massively amazing here. Not like, you know, Dragon Fighter or, you know, anything to that degree sealed. But still, I think it's so neat to have 8 games as they were from the factory back in the day. I think that is so cool. So with that said, that is my collection of boxed NES games, over 300 of them. And I hope that you enjoyed just having a look. And let me know what you think, if there's any particular NES boxes that you think are neat. If there's anything you think I should have mentioned here that I didn't, there's probably a few. You know, like DuckTales is great. Like, I could have easily gone over like every single game, how I feel about it. And, you know, what I think about its box art and such, but I think that this video's probably been going on for long enough that we'll leave it at that. And anything you would like to see maybe in more detail in the future, definitely put it in those comments down below. Donate $6 million to Patreon, as I do not read comments unless you have first done that. And then yeah, hope to see you next time for something different. So thanks, and see you later.